What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Buckeye-Film-Breakdown. As always, I'm Jeremy. Opposite side of the screen, we got Coach Slate. Wanted to hop on here and discuss what it sounds like is going to be a new addition to the Buckeye coaching staff. Not necessarily a quote-unquote sexy hire, but a hire a lot of people are clamoring for. Coincidentally enough, Slate said right before we came on here, the number of Ohio State fans who are barking for a special teams coach when everybody hated Parker Fleming being a special teams coach. Sounds like Ryan Day is going to add one to the fold.
Yeah, it is funny to think about. It wasn't that long ago that people wanted Parker Fleming off the staff, and there was no need to have a full-time special teams coach who's making $500,000 a year. That was something that all the message boards and Buckeye fans were saying. Having been somebody who was sitting in those rooms with Coach Fleming, like I remember at coaches clinics and spring practices. I got to sit in there in bowl practices, having been invited down by Coach Hinton. I got to sit in those meeting rooms with Coach Fleming. Coach Fleming was a pretty respected guy. He did a really good job of coordinating and running those special teams meetings. And so his job was very, very, very important. And so if you're going to have a special teams coordinator, it is vital that they are compensated as a typical coordinator, maybe not like what Arthur Smith is going to make or what Coach
Right.
Patricia is going to make, but they are a full-time coach. Like they are a coordinator. Like that is a very serious job. And so getting somebody potentially like the guy from Notre Dame that they are talking about, I'm going to butcher his last name, so I won't even attempt to say it. But he comes in with a ton of respect and a ton of knowledge, and so I think this is something that Coach Day has identified that he needs. Obviously, we know he had Rob Keys and Gunnar Daniel really taking a hold of the special teams this past year, and if, like you said before, if Jaden Fielding makes a few more kicks, I mean, are we really in this position,
Yep.
right? If Joe McGuire averages 48 yards a punt instead of 43 yards a punt, are we in this position? You know what I mean? So I just think, special teams can be a little fickle thing, but I think Coach Day has identified this as something that we need, and he's identified somebody, and so he's going to go get it.
It's such a weird grouping, though, to be in charge of because you may go an entire game and your punter doesn't get a rep in the game, and or you don't kick a field goal, which Jaden Fielding had his struggles even with extra points from shorter field goals that were essentially extra points. But what we forget is in the 24-25 run, Jaden Fielding made some clutch kicks. Made the kick to seal the natty. Everybody was, oh my God, this is the rebirth of Jaden Fielding. And
Yeah,
then he gets back on the struggle bus in the 25, the 25-26 run. I guess it never made it to 26 because we hate New Year's Eve games.
yeah.
Um, but the reps are so few and far between a lot of times. It's really hard to get into a groove as a kicker. Obviously I've never kicked. Um, but you look at it and you hear it during games all the time. He was nailing it from 55, headed this way in warmups without anybody coming at him with zero pressure. It's a totally different animal. It's
Yeah.
also it's also really funny to me to watch now. Obviously, Ohio State hasn't had this luxury, and obviously with the new kickoff return situation, you aren't trying to boot it out of the back of the end zone all the time. But the number of kickers who off of a tee can split the uprights and
Yeah.
then a straight on field goal, they struggle with. It's I understand there's the snap and the hold and that type of thing, but in your experience, take us in to the anatomy of a field goal.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different factors into it. I always think of it like golf. There's so many different factors that go into a swing, right? It is the wind, it is, where you're positioned on the field, it is the entire process, right? Kickers have such a process that they have to go through consistently. I remember being, the head coach, and we had a kicker who could really crush the ball. But I remember in pregame, my guy was struggling mentally, and I had to look at our kicking coach and like, hey man, like I don't know if he's going to be able to lock in for the rest of the day. And so he just did kickoffs that day and he couldn't do extra points. And I had to bring in a linebacker to toe pass the thing through the uprights. I think kicking and kicking field goals specifically is such a process driven thing.
Mhm.
And if there's one thing that throws that process off, you just never know. And then sometimes that process can be money and you just don't know, like maybe I got the laces on the ball this time,
Right.
or maybe there was a gust of wind that I didn't account for. You hear things, I'm wearing a Browns hat tonight. You hear Phil Dawson talk about the wind in a certain area of the stadium. You're not going to, it's not going to show on the flags on the goalpost that the wind is blowing this way. But if you get it up there, there's going to be a gust that takes the ball this way. Like there's just so many different factors that go into it. And kickers, I love them. They are fantastic. There's just a lot that goes into being a kicker up here, like
Oh
mentally.
yeah.
And so it's just a process driven thing that you've got to make sure that your kicker has their process. You got to give them their space, and then they just got to go out and execute. And I think Jaden Fielding, like I said, I haven't been at spring practices. He crushes the ball. I mean, crushes the ball. But sometimes his process in games was just, messed up. And, there were people that gave him a hard time about, kicking from the side and in pregame. Like, I don't want my kicker all tense before the game. I don't want him freaking out before the game. I want him kind of loose. And so it's just it is a real fickle thing that you have to worry about when it comes to being a kicker, and you have to worry about the anatomy of a field goal and everything. And so it's just a really process driven thing that people often overlook until it actually matters. And so I think we wouldn't be in this position had we made a few more kicks, but here we are, and hopefully we get somebody in here good, and hopefully this guy from Baylor and the guy from Houston Christian and all these guys that we're bringing in the special teams room can really get things straightened out so they don't have to deal with Buckeye Nation.
Well, and I think that's one of the things that kind of ruffles feathers, on both the punt side and the kick side, is you land Nick McClarty and you see this dude bombing punts out of the stadium. And obviously we're not at practice, but to never see the dude get a look in a game, I think there were some scenarios where you could have just wanted somebody to go in there and boom a ball and you never give him a shot. I understand to bring a guy in cold is not ideal, but I think you combine that with Jackson Corville never getting a look in a game. The fan base starts to grow irritated when you see the guys who are getting all of the reps not necessarily finding consistency and or improvement.
Yeah, and I get that. I get that frustration. I think when on the punting side of things, I think McGuire is a pretty consistent
Mhm.
punter. I think he consistently punts the ball in that 45-yard range, right? I think his average is right at 43 or something like that. He's a pretty consistent punter. He doesn't boom the ball like sometimes you would want him to. I think he's actually a pretty decent rugby style kicker. But I would have also liked to see McClarty, but consistency is something that is huge. He may bomb one that's 60 yards, but on the next one, if he shanks one and it goes 30, like we see the big difference that field position can make in a game. And
Mhm.
so that's not something that you're willing to take as a special teams coordinator, because this is your livelihood on the line. It's
Yeah.
your job on the line. If you're banking on this guy to, I need him in this moment to hit a 60-yard punt, and he goes out and he shanks one and it only goes 30, 35. Now Coach Day is looking at me sideways. Why'd you put him in this situation? So I'm going to go with the guy that we know what we're going to get. He's consistent. He may not crush the ball past 50 all the time, but we know he's going to get it 42, 43, 44, 45 every single time. And so I think that's where it comes down to with the punting situation. And the kicker, you just have to go with who you see in practice. Like, what am I seeing in practice? We're trying to simulate as many high pressure situations as we can in practice, trying to get things amped up and loud, turning up the music, getting the guys around them, putting things on the line. Who executes in those situations? I guarantee you Ohio State was doing that, and Jaden Fielding was winning those situations. And I think it was evident when Jackson Corville transfers and he doesn't go to another major program. And so I think that shows like, okay, maybe he wasn't really, performing the way that he should have been in practice. And so I just think there's just a lot that goes into it. And I trust the coaches. I mean, Coach Daniel, he's a really young guy, but he is going to be a rising star when it comes to special teams in this profession. I mean, there's a lot of respect for him. And I know he takes his job very, very serious. And he wasn't going to put somebody out there that was going to hurt the team.
Yeah, totally. And I think, that all makes sense. And it's just frustrating because we were spoiled for a while, especially with punters. You had Cameron Johnston, for example, who was that rugby style but could bomb it.
Yeah.
Kickers, it's been a little hit or miss. We all thought Noah Ruggles was good until the
Yeah.
Georgia game, which I don't put the Georgia kick all on him, though. That clock management on that drive
Yep.
was terrible. So then you're doing the rushed field goal package, and you don't get a chance to go through the steps. You watch kickers, like you said, from the mental side of life. Every time a kicker lines up, even for a kickoff, they're counting their steps. They're very
Yep.
deliberate about their steps, and it is all up here. Uh, you know, I would get frustrated even watching high school games, partially because I was very partial to the kicker. And, I would watch a kid missing a PAT right off the rip, and the coach would go for two every other time after that. And like,
Yeah.
you're just deflating these kids if you do that. So I understand rolling with the guy who might be struggling, i.e., Jaden Fielding. Um, but it's frustrating to watch for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely tough, and you want to make sure you're showing confidence in the guys because as a kicker, just like your golf game, man, you just got to keep swinging.
Yep.
You got to continue to go through your process and trust that process, and eventually you're going to come out on the other side. As a coach, it does get tough, but you need to see in practice that the guy that's behind him is showing you on a consistent basis that he is the better option, and
Right.
until he shows you that you've got to ride with the guy that's out there. I mean, Jaden Fielding, his kicking percentage was not bad. He just missed kicks in big moments,
Yep.
and so and the other thing too is like the kick to seal the national championship. I don't think people realize like how hard of a kick that was.
Yeah.
When you're in college and you have that like the hash marks are wider, like
Yep.
that close of a kick and that angle, that is a tough kick. So he can make those tough kicks in big moments. It just this year, there was some tough times like the Indiana game where he had a very similar kick and it just, he pulled it and just put us in a tough spot. So but yeah, man, as a coach, you just got to go with the guys that continually show you in practice, man, over and over again.
Yeah. So, the rumor out there is that Marty Biaggi, I don't know if that's exactly how you pronounce the last name, from Notre Dame, is going to be coming to Ohio State. This is a guy, the thing I like about him is he actually played both punter and place kicker. So he's not just trying to teach, listen as I say, he's going to show you as he did. Um, Quite a resume. Um, Arkansas Pine Bluff co-defensive coordinator. That was back in 2011. Spent time at Notre Dame in 2016 as an analyst. North Texas, Purdue, Ole Miss, Notre Dame. Those were all special teams coordinator stops. And then he added the title of assistant defensive backs coach at Notre Dame in 2024. So a total of 16 years of college experience, and along with that, 10 years in the special teams coordinator game. Quickly, the Notre Dame effect, I guess you would say, they had a lot of good come out of their special teams. And that was in the 2024 year. They had 6 blocked kicks, 3 blocked punts, and they were 5th in the country in kickoff return defense.
Yeah, I mean, the guys definitely had a lot of success. I think it's good to get somebody in here, like you said, who was a kicker, who did do punting as well, who can work with those guys specifically. I think that is something that's huge. Oftentimes special teams coordinators don't really have that kicking experience, so they've got to
Right.
go hire a kicking coach and different things like that. But now you're going to have a coordinator who can really speak to what the kicker is going to be going through. So I think that the kicker or punter is going to be going through. So I think that's really good. The other thing I really like about this guy is that he has got, experience coaching other positions. I love to see that he was a co-defensive coordinator at an HBCU. Like I love seeing that he's got experience in a lot of different realms with a lot of different types of schools as well. He's been at the big schools, he's been at the smaller schools, he's been at an HBCU. So he's got a wealth of diversity when it comes to where he's been. And I think that is a great thing when you have to come to a place like Ohio State, that makes you more relatable to the kids. And so I think that's going to be something that's huge if this is something that comes to fruition. The other thing I think too is, one thing that people overlooked with Parker Fleming. Parker Fleming was an assistant DB coach as well. And so if this does happen, he may be the assistant DB coach. He may be working with another position group on the defensive side of the ball, but he will be working in tandem with another position group. And so I think that is really good to have that extra set of hands, that extra set of eyes when it's not special teams time. And then the other thing is too, and I want people to always remember this, position coaches will still be assigned special teams that they are working with.
Yeah.
Yes, the special teams coordinator is the one that is in charge. He'll be leading all the meetings and he will be doing all those things. But there will be specific coaches that will still be working with those uh those different special teams units as well, whether it's in Indy, whether our special teams Indy, whether it's in special teams group. And so that's one thing I want us to remember as well. So it won't just be him by himself. There will be a whole host of people that will be supporting him as well. And so I think if this does happen, I think it will be a good move. I didn't think we would go back to having a full-time special teams coordinator, but Coach Day obviously has identified that this is a need. And so, hey, if you think it's a need, then I want you to go find the best. And all by all accounts, this is who a lot of people believe he is the best. I think he was a finalist through Football Scoop or one of the other publications for the 2024 Special Teams Coordinator of the Year. And so this is a guy who is coming well respected in our profession. And so if we can get him, let's go get him, and hopefully we're able to block some punts, change some games, and really affect those games where we may be struggling on offense, and those Indiana games and those Miami games, and we could have a huge play that changes, or turns the tide for us, and that will be good for us on those games that we can count on another the third realm of the game, because I think that was something that was kind of missed this year.
Well, and you saw it in the Natty. You saw a blocked
Yep.
punt in the Natty. I mean, that was a huge play in that game. This is obviously one of the benefits of unlimited coaches, because it's not like he's going to be a guy on the road recruiting, but to be able to have a guy who has the actual title of special teams coordinator, and like you said, that all the other groups will funnel to. You may have Coach Johnson may be in charge of punt block, and OG Walt might be in charge of gunners or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
to have all those guys funneling to one guy who is your go-to, it's no different than any profession you're in. You're starting to use that hierarchy to where it funnels to somebody. So I think that's really good. Obviously, we don't know if this is truly going to happen, but it's definitely out there pretty hot and heavy. I would assume we'll hear something sooner than later if it does go down. Um, you know, who's to say there's not going to be more staff changes coming? There's some question mark stuff out there. You know, it's pretty public records knowledge, the length of contracts, and there's a pretty big contract expiring. Um, and we'll see what happens there. But as always, tap in Buckeye-Film-Breakdown.com. We will keep you guys in the loop as things come out, and we will always provide you with our thoughts and insights, and look forward to hearing your guys as well.